The creation of the United Nations in 1945 was a pivotal moment in modern history. What was the main reason for the creation of the UN? The main reason for the creation of the UN in 1945 was to prevent a repeat of the horrors of World War II. After devastating conflicts that claimed millions of lives, the world community realized the need for an international organization capable of maintaining peace and security. This understanding was formalized at the Dumbarton Oaks Conference, where the foundations of the future UN were laid. Interesting fact, in early 1945, when the conference in San Francisco was about to open, many countries, including the USSR and the USA, tried to establish diplomatic relations in order to create more effective mechanisms of international cooperation. The USSR delegation even brought a proposal for a permanent UN peacekeeping force, which was one of the first steps towards the formation of peacekeeping operations. Who were the main initiators of the creation of the UN? The United States and Great Britain were the main initiators of the creation of the UN, but they were soon joined by the USSR, China, and France. These countries played a leading role in shaping the charter of the UN and determined its future goals and functions. Interesting fact. In 1944, at the Bretton Woods Conference, where economic issues of the post-war world were discussed, the basis for the creation of the UN was also laid. The conference participants realized that economic stability and international cooperation were closely linked to maintaining peace. How was the conference to create the UN held? The conference to create the United Nations was held in San Francisco from April 25 to June 26, 1945. It was attended by representatives of 50 countries who were working to draft the UN Charter. The conference was intense. Delegates discussed security, human rights, and economic cooperation. Interesting fact, during the conference, delegates discussed and incorporated the concept of human rights into the UN Charter for the first time in history. This was an important step towards the creation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was adopted in 1948. What are the main purposes of the UN as stipulated in its charter? The main purposes of the UN, according to its charter, include the maintenance of international peace and security, the development of friendly relations among nations, cooperation in solving international problems, and the promotion of respect for human rights. Interesting fact, the first resolution of the UN General Assembly adopted in 1948 dealt with educational and cultural cooperation, which emphasized the importance of humanitarian aspects in the organization's activities. What role did smaller countries play in the creation of the UN? Smaller countries such as Australia, Canada, and Norway were actively involved in the creation of the UN, emphasizing the importance of multifaceted international cooperation. Their participation ensured a wider range of views and interests, which helped to build consensus on key issues. Interesting fact, Norway was one of the first countries to propose the idea of a permanent international court, which later led to the creation of the UN International Court of Justice in 1946. What mechanism was used to ensure peace and security? The main mechanism to ensure peace and security is the UN Security Council, which consists of 15 members, 5 of which are permanent: the USA, USSR, UK, France, and China. These countries have the right to veto the decisions of the Security Council. Interesting fact, the first meetings of the Security Council in 1946 discussed issues related to nuclear disarmament, emphasizing the importance of nuclear security in the post-war world. Question 7. How does the UN deal with human rights violations? Well, the UN utilizes a number of mechanisms to protect human rights, including the establishment of special procedures and commissions. For example, the Commission on Human Rights has dealt with violations of citizens' rights in different countries. Oh, and here's an interesting fact. In 1966, the UN adopted the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which became one of the main documents in the field of human rights and was signed by most of the participating countries. Question 8. How has the UN responded to conflicts since its creation? Since its creation, the UN has been actively involved in international conflict resolution. sending peacekeeping forces to hotspots such as Korea in 1950 to 1953 and the Congo in the 1960s. Interesting fact, the first UN peacekeeping operation was deployed to Palestine in 1948, which was the beginning of a long and complex process of UN peacekeeping in different regions of the world. Question 9. What was the role of the UN in the decolonization process? The UN played an important role in the process of decolonization by supporting the rights of peoples to self-determination and providing a platform to discuss the independence of countries in Africa and Asia. Interesting fact. In 1960, the UN adopted the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples, which became a powerful tool for the liberation of colonies around the world. Question 10. What are the achievements of the UN during its existence? During its existence, the UN has made significant achievements in the development of international law, human rights, poverty alleviation, and health. The organization is also actively involved in the fight against climate change and supports sustainable development. Interesting fact. In 2000, the UN adopted the Millennium Development Goals, which became the basis for a global program to reduce poverty and improve living conditions for millions of people around the world. The creation of the United Nations in 1945 was an important step toward building a more peaceful and just world. Working to address global challenges, the UN continues to be a key player in the international arena, and its achievements and challenges remain relevant today.